Mama, why isn't there anything good on television?
I don't know, Grant. Why don't you go ahead and get started on that book review for your AP US History class?
But Mama, I don't want to learn about Thomas Jefferson. That's boring.
I'm not going to argue with you, Grant. You better get started.
Thanks, Mama.
You're welcome.
Man, I can see why Joseph J. Ellis named this book The American Sphinx. Man. Wow. So much information. Whoa. Look, there's something on TV about Thomas Jefferson right now. Good evening. I'm Charles Grant Merritt. I was just reading this book entitled The American Sphinx, The Character of Thomas Jefferson. This book was an attempt to unravel the complexities of Thomas Jefferson. Stay tuned in this exclusive Barbara Walters interview. Good evening, I'm Barbara Walters, and thanks for tuning in to this special 2020 edition of Who is Thomas Jefferson? Stay tuned as we explore the mysterious character of Thomas Jefferson and the new book, American Sphinx, The Character of Thomas Jefferson. Mr. Jefferson, is it true that you were born in Shadwell, Virginia? Why, yes, Barbara. I am a true Virginian citizen. Mr. Jefferson, when your father passed away in 1757, how did that affect your life? Well, Father was always viewed as a hero in our small mountain village of Shadwell. His name was Peter, and he was a moderately well-to-do planter. He was very successful, and he had a local reputation for physical strength. I was expected to fulfill his role, but I wasn't into such thing as he was. Mother and I didn't get along very well. No, Mama, I will not go work in the fields.
Yes, Thomas, you will.
I'm going to go study my books and go practice my violin.
And you're going to bed without supper, too.
No! Fine! Mr. Jefferson, after your success at the College of William and Mary, I hear that you made two very important decisions in 1768. Ah, yes, 1768. That was a very good year for me. I had a lifelong dream of constructing a mansion in the mountains. The mountain was about 867 feet, and I wanted to name it Monticello. Next, I made the offer to be a candidate in the Virginia legislature, also known as the Virginia House of Burgesses. Monticello fulfilled my lifelong dream of retiring in a very private and secluded area. Running for the House of Burgesses satisfied my hunger for political things. I took office in May of 1769. Mr. Jefferson, tell me about your dealings as a member of Congress in 1784. Ah, yes, Congress. It was such a pity that the state's system of weights and measures were not converted to the metric system. You see, more than half of the world is based on the metric system, and we're still stuck on miles and gallons. What the heck is that? On the other hand, I was very pleased with the adoption of my dollar. I'm very proud of it. Mr. Jefferson, what is your opinion on Shays' Rebellion? Ha! I remember that. Shays' Rebellion. That was a perfect example of my views toward federal government. I was pleased to find that people were not afraid to join together and fight for a common cause. That bloody Massachusetts legislature, I will not let them take away my farmland and raise my taxes. We rebel. Die! No! Comment on the Federalist Papers. Ah, yes, the Federalist Papers. That was a masterpiece of its time. I believe my exact words were, the best commentary on the principles of government which have ever been written. The Federalist Papers. I cannot believe it. What a stroke of genius. How could they come up with such a wonderful masterpiece? It says here that you were absent at the Constitutional Convention. What's that all about? My absence at the Constitutional Convention was due to my being an ambassador to France. I felt really bad about having missing it, but my duties in France were not to go unfinished. How did you and other anti-federalists ever agree to the ratification of the Constitution? The Articles of Confederation were sufficient enough for me. I advised Madison to propose a Bill of Rights that would protect individual freedoms. That way, the 3/4 majority was met. The Southern states agreed.
Mr. Jefferson, how are we going to get the Anti-Federalists to agree to the Constitution?
Well, my lad, the North wants to protect the South's individual freedoms. It's genius. If we protect, more specifically, if the Bill of Rights protects individual freedoms, all anti-federalists will agree to the Constitution. While part of the Washington administration, I hear that you and Alexander Hamilton had a very big rivalry. What's the story here? Well, Secretary of State years. I remember those quite well. I could tell that Washington was favoring that scoundrel of a Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Alexander Hamilton. I was puzzled by his position and party platform because he contributed to such a beautiful work known as the Federalist Papers. Yes, we were rivals. Everything I opposed, he championed, and vice versa. We argued on every little thing. The main issue that we disagreed upon was the National Bank. But he convinced Congress to establish this national bank if the capital city of the United States was moved to the South, which is in present-day Washington, D.C. No, I'm the best!
I'm the best! I'm the best!
Oh, God!
I told you I was the best.
This isn't the end of it. I recall you being selected to draft the Declaration of Independence. What's the story here? First of all, I do want to say that about 25% of my original version was deleted by Mr. Franklin and various other significant others. I was outraged by their actions because they had mangled one of my masterpieces. I was so outraged that I had my original version circulated in local newspapers. But I was outvoted, and there was nothing I could do about it. My main goal was to list the grievances of that bloody English mother country. The very thought of Britain made me sick. But anyway, the Declaration of Independence was submitted and my task was completed. Ha! I got it! This Declaration of Independence is perfect. That beastly King of England, this'll teach him a lesson. Ha ha ha. Now, here's the mother of all questions. Did you actually have sexual relations with your slave named Sally Hemings? I knew this was coming. Mr. Ellis made it quite clear that he believed that I had sexual relations with Sally Hemings. I cannot believe that he put that in his book. What do you call these things? DNA testing? Well, these things say that I did have sexual relations with Sally Hemings, but you have to ask yourself, would I, after all my resentment towards the Negro race and their mixing in our supreme society, would I ever consider such a disdainful act of indecency? How could anybody believe this?
Nobody wanna be up together, but it don't matter, no. Nobody wanna be up together.
Finally, you ran for president in 1800. How did that go? 1800. That was a very intriguing year. Aaron Burr was my opponent in the presidential election. And incidentally, it was a tie. I couldn't believe it. The House of Representatives came to my rescue, where Alexander Hamilton, ironically, decided to vote for me for the next president. Secretly, I wanted to laugh in his face. Thomas Jefferson, you dirty douchebag! How could you want to laugh at me? Ah! 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 No! Ah! Sorry, folks. We have a 5-minute intermission. Welcome to the Maury Show. Today's show will feature Sally Hemings in her search for the father of her 2-month-old son, Emmis.
I am 110% sure that Thomas Jefferson is the father of my son. Bring his white behind out here.
Once this DNA test shows that I'm not the father, I want Sally to stay the hell away from me. Today we have Susie, who is Sally's best friend. Susie, how long have you known Sally?
We have been friends all our life.
Do you believe that Thomas Jefferson is the father of Sally Hemings' son?
Yes.
We had the DNA results, and they're in right here. Let's find out who's the father. Thomas, when it comes to 2-month-old Emmis, Thomas, you are the father.
I told you were the father. Start handing in my child support.
Oh God.
There's no way I could have sexual relations with this slave.
That ain't what you said last night, master.
This concludes today's show. Let's get back to that exclusive Barbara Waters interview. Mr. Jefferson, what's the deal with you and Supreme Court Justice Samuel Chase? Why did you not like him so much? Samuel Chase. What a very interesting character. He was only second to John Marshall as the biggest Federalist of the Supreme Court. Grrr! That bloody Supreme Court. It could have burned and gone to hell for all I cared. After I read about Chase's inflammatory charges against the Baltimore jury, I immediately wrote to one of the Republican leaders of the House of Representatives. I intended this letter to be a hint to the House of Representatives to impeach him. I was so mad at him. He went against everything that I believed in. That little backstabber Samuel Chase. I'm gonna get him. This is going straight to the House of Representatives. I will certainly have him impeached. How dare him go against everything that I believe in? I'll get that Supreme Court. Mr. Jefferson, in this new book titled The American Sphinx, The Character of Thomas Jefferson, he explains your life and accomplishments. Also, he wields such a convincing analysis of your character and the way you think. Would it be at all possible to believe what he has said about you? Well, I had the chance to read the book entirely on my way here from Monticello. From what I see, Mr. Ellis was very accurate in his historical background information about me. The only thing that bothered me was his accusation of my ideas contradicting my actions. Who would think of that? For example, if I was to ever lead a political party, I had to stamp my beliefs firmly as an anti-slavery activist. That was one of my ways of gaining support. As a citizen of Virginia, I was expected to be a slave owner. Never once did I treat them inhumanely. I was always nice to them. In all honesty, slavery was necessary if the United States was ever to amount to anything. From what I have gathered from this book, Mr. Ellis held me in high regard, while also trying to unravel the complexities of my life and what seemed to be the contradictions of my actions and ideas. Not to discredit Mr. Ellis, but could you believe that, in spite of everything, I would disregard everything that I fought for? I really don't believe that it is fair to write a book on the psychology of the human mind, it is so complex. There is no possible way to unravel it. Now that I think about it, American Sphinx is a nice combination of fact and opinion to separate it from all the other biographies about me. It occurred to me that books would be written about me. It was only natural that history be written down. But I never imagined that my life would impact the United States so much as to write a book like this. Well, I have to say, it's a very good portrait of me, don't you think? But why? Why would Mr. Ellis name me the American Sphinx? Mr. Jefferson, that does seem like a very well-suited title. Wouldn't you agree? I believe I have come up with a conclusion. Maybe Mr. Ellis believed that I was strong in my beliefs, constructed of many elements, but also a national icon with a lasting legacy. I remember reading about the Sphinx, the Great Sphinx in Egypt. It is over 1,000 years old. Wait a minute, 2,000 years old. By golly, it's about 3,000 years old. Gosh, I couldn't believe it. Mr. Ellis named me the American Sphinx because he thought that my ideas and my legacy would last so long. I finally see it. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Jefferson, thank you for being here.
And Barbara, thanks for having me as well.
Sally?
Master! Master!
Come here, Sally. What have you been doing?
I've been hauling.
You've done a very good job.
Well, thank you.
Another aspect of Joseph Ellis's book, The American Sphinx, he portrayed Thomas Jefferson as having contradicting his political ambitions with his actual property of slaves. You see, Thomas Jefferson was anti-federalist and believed in no slavery. He wanted to abolish it, and actually he wanted to include it into the Declaration of Independence. But that was one of the many things that was deleted from his original version. You see, Thomas Jefferson seemed to contradict himself, but, well, yes, Thomas Jefferson did contradict himself. Thomas Jefferson was against slavery, but he owned slaves. What the heck was that? I want this Louisiana territory.
But sir, I thought your policies were for reducing federal government power.
They are, but I still want this land. Another contradiction illustrated in Joseph Ellis's book, The American Sphinx. Thomas Jefferson was all about reducing federal government power. Incidentally, the annexation of the Louisiana Territory actually doubled the size of the United States, and also it doubled the power of the federal government. What was he thinking? Despite the overwhelming contradictions of Thomas Jefferson, I highly recommend this book, American Sphinx, The Character of Thomas Jefferson. This book illustrates the true story of Thomas Jefferson. I can't believe the amount of information I've learned about Thomas Jefferson. This was a very, very great book. American Sphinx follows Thomas Jefferson's life all the way from his childhood to his retirement in Monticello. Joseph J. Ellis, the author of this great book, unravels the mysteries behind Thomas Jefferson in a very extraordinary way. Thomas Jefferson may have been the greatest president in American history. American Sphinx truly illustrates his greatness. Pick up your copy today.
Closed captioning on Fox is being brought to you by these sponsors.
Well, I'm really glad I watched that television broadcast on Thomas Jefferson. That was very cool and interesting. I better go get started now. Well,